Welcome to Rise and Shine, your daily business tech boost with me, Charly Leetham. If you're a small business owner looking to simplify technology and get real, actionable advice from someone with 35 years of IT experience, you're in the right place. Every episode, I'll dive into tools and systems like email, CRM, marketing, and tracking, and I'll break them down into bite-sized tips you can use straight away. Your time is valuable, so let's get straight to the point. It's time to work smarter, not harder. Rise and Shine. It's your daily dose of business tech inspiration with me, Charly Leetham. Episode number 573. I'm going to talk about fonts on your website, readability, sales, how they all are interconnected, and the things that you need to think about. It's not just the fonts, it's the typography on your website. So typography is your fonts, the way it lays out, the color of the fonts that you use, the size of the fonts, all of those things. Fonts impact readability and trust on your website. Hard to read fonts make visitors leave faster. Overly decorative, decorative or thin fonts can hurt credibility. So this is a discussion that I have with the designers on my team regularly, with people with my team members who help me lay out web pages and get things done. I spend an awful lot of time going through and tweaking the way the text on the page actually looks. I wear glasses. I'm blind. I'm not legally blind, but I really have trouble seeing small things. I've not got my glasses on. I'm not going to see past the end of my nose. So when I see a site and I've got to squint to get in to see the font, or I actually have to zoom in to see the font, it makes me I'm not going to want to stick around on a site like that. So the size of the font's part of the thing that we need to consider, but it's not just the size of the font that we need to consider. It is the font itself. Are we using a serif font? Are we using a sans serif font? What do we mean by sans serif and serif fonts? So if you look at a font, Arial, for example, that is a sans serif font. And if you look at Times New Roman, that is a serif font. And what we're talking about is on the end of each letter, there are little tags. Like if you've got the crossbar, there's tags down. On the eyes, there's normally little tags on the bottom and on the top and on the bottom. So they're serif fonts. Those little tags that we're talking about, they're called serif. Sans serif fonts are very plain. They don't have those little tags on them. They're normally a very clean, boring font. You might call them a boring font. You need to decide whether you want to have serif or sans serif fonts on your site, or whether you want to have a mix of both. I'm going to say that research I have done in the past, I haven't checked it recently, is that females tend to like reading sans serif fonts, and men tend to like reading serif fonts. I don't know why. It was just one of the pieces of research that I found. It certainly has panned out over time that that's been correct as well. But that all said, I tend to use a mix of both. My heading fonts tend to be serif fonts, and my readable fonts tend to be sans serif fonts. Why is that? Because the serif fonts, they do look prettier. They do look nicer, but they can also look very busy and very cluttered because of the serifs on them. So if I leave them as a headline, they stand out, they look good, and then I find a complementing sans serif font to do my body text with, my paragraph text, my content with, so that it's cleaner. So we've got the size of the font's really, really important. I'll come back to what is an appropriate size, and you're not going to like the answer. The type of font, is it sans serif or serif font, is important. The next thing that we need to consider when we're talking about layouts and typography and fonts on our website is the spacing between the paragraphs. I really hate going to websites, and the spacing within the paragraph, between the lines in the paragraph, is really big. Why? Because it's not blocking. I read by blocking. So I will look at text, and I will look at text that is all together and go, oh, that's all together. I'll read it. I'll guarantee that you will do something similar, if not exactly the same. So when you've got a paragraph that's really spaced out, it's like you read a line, then you read the next line, then you read the next line, rather than it being pulled down together and going, yep, read, 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 read. It doesn't feel continuous to me. It feels like that's a line, that's a line, that's a line, that's one thing, that's another thing, that's another thing. And then I realize that that's actually a paragraph, and I've got to go back and reread it. And it breaks in my brain. I'm breaking the way I'm reading that text. So I prefer, when I'm doing it, I like to not squash the paragraphs up. I don't like using what we would call single line height spacing, where it's the size of the font, and then the next line down you've got just a little gap, and the next font it's one line spacing. I like to give it a little bit of space between it, like what I call air. Like it to breathe a little. I like to be able to see the white space around it, but I don't like it so spread out that it's hard to read. So often what I will do when I'm looking, and here we come back to what size font do I use and what size line spacing do I use. Often I will just look at how it lays out on a page and then tweak it. It's as simple as that for me. I don't have any real, oh, this must be, to be absolutely perfect, this must be 16px and it needs to be 1.25 em line height. I will look at it based on the amount of text that we have on the page. I will look at it on the type of font we've chosen. I will look at it in terms of how big our margins are, what's happening around it as well. Like it really is a matter of, does that look good to me? Does that look like I'm going to engage my readers? Does that look like we're going to actually capture people's attention? Or am I going to lose them? Or is it just too squashy and they're just going to go away because they can't read it? Now, I don't know if you noticed in there, I mentioned some measurements. So px is pixels. So 16 pixels, that's the size of the font. It's 16, it's a pixel, one of the dots on the screen. It depends on your resolution as to how big that pixel is. But it's one of the dots on you. So it's 16 dots tall on your screen. 16px for Arial is not necessarily 16px for open sans. It's not the same as 16px for Times New Roman. You can lay text out the same size and it will look entirely different. It still takes up 16 dots, but it looks entirely different. So sometimes, yeah, you've got to look at it and say, well, I would use 16px if it was this font, but now I'm using this new font. What do I need to use? And you need to play around with it. You need to determine what looks good for you. The one thing I'm going to suggest that you do if you're looking at your font size is make sure that some people go, oh, but I like it small because it looks elegant and it looks good. That's great, but is it readable? Sometimes you're going to have to trade off a little bit about oh, this looks really professional and elegant it still looks professional, not quite as elegant, but it's very, very readable. So you've got to trade that off. Remember that you are not your visitor. You are not your customer. You need to think about what your customer is going to grab onto. The other measurement I used there was EM. I actually don't even know I should know what EM stands for. I can't think what it means off the top of my head. But 1 EM is one standard line height. So if I've got my paragraph text set to 1 EM line height, that means each line is just going to be the same line height as the text. So it's going to look really squashed up together. It's quite normal. It's quite okay. It just will look quite squashy in the scheme of things. 1.25 EM means that it is a quarter. It takes a quarter of the line height and adds it to the line height so that you get a little bit more breadth. You need to play around with it to see what works best for you. Sometimes line height is also expressed in px as pixels. So you can have 16 px font, 16 pixels font, and you can have a 20px line height. So that's, 40% more, is that right? 4px extra. There we go. I'm not even going to try and do the math on that one. 4px extra in the line height. There is no, I mean, yes, the general rule of thumb is that you use EM when you're doing line height. Theoretically, you should also use EM when you're doing your font size. Lots and lots of sites just default to using PX. So just bear that in mind when you're doing it. You will need to, when you're laying your site out, think about those sorts of things. Sometimes the other thing that you need to consider is the space between, look at me here, the space between your paragraphs. So you might have a heading, and then you might have your paragraph text. And if you just use standard spacing throughout and say, all right, this is my standard spacing, you look at it and it's like you've got a heading, and then you've got a gap, and then you've got your paragraph, and then you've got a gap, and then you've got a heading, and then you've got a gap, and then you've got your paragraph, and nothing looks like it's all together. I do, again, when I'm talking, especially when I'm designing with my team and trying to explain this to my team, we want to try and keep your heading and your paragraphs together so that you know that that's a block. See, back to that block thing, I block read, you're blocking your text out as you're reading it. So you know that that's all together. Then have a bit more of a space at the end of that paragraph block, or that block of text, and put your next heading. And so it's really the space above the heading that you're changing. And then the space below your heading is a little more less, so that it pulls all of your text up so that it's all together. Do play around with it. Have a think about how you want it to look. Don't just take something and say, oh, yeah, that's okay. If you think it looks wrong, have a play. See what you can come up with. See what makes sense to you. I would always recommend, by the way, if you are going to go into your website and make these changes, make sure you take a backup. If you're going to change a style sheet, take a copy of the style sheet so you can go back to it if you want. So typography comes down to your font that you choose, the size of the font, and the line height, and the paragraph spacing all the way through your layout so that it all looks good. I guess there's a couple more things that I want to do here. I'm just looking at my notes, making sure I cover everything. The other thing to consider when you are laying your site out, particularly for text, is make sure that your text contrasts against the background, and make sure that it's easy to read. I really, really dislike going to websites where it's a black background and they've got grey text on the black background. Really hard, especially when it's a darker grey. Really hard to read. Really, it makes my eyes strain. I won't read it. I leave. I can't read it. If you want to have a black background, you need to have white text. And if not white, just off white. The reason I wouldn't necessarily go white is because the contrast between white and black is really stark, and the white can look really bright. But you could go to a just off white, just to take that shine out of it, and you've still got that nice contrast. If you're going to go for a light background, make sure you're using a dark text, a dark font dark coloured font on the light background. Make sure you've got enough contrast there so that the text is easy to read. It is very, very easy to look at something and say, oh, gee, that colour scheme looks really good. I love it. I'm just going to use it. And it's like dark text on it, or not quite so dark text on a dark background. And you lay it and you think, that looks great. And then people come to you and they can't read it. So again, it's really about you may need to trade off some of that elegance to give you functionality, and that's okay because it can still look good. It just doesn't possibly look as good as you think it should look. So do bear that in mind when you're doing that. The final thing is, when you're looking at the number of fonts on your site, try please to minimize the number of fonts that you're using on the site. I typically have 2 to 3. I have a heading font and I have a text font, and then I have an accent font. And that accent font is the thing that we use for call outs, for call to action buttons. It's different enough that it looks different, it stands out, it will draw the eye, but it's used minimally throughout. You don't use it everywhere. It's something that is used to draw the attention of someone. Your heading font is the one that is used across all the headings, and your text font is the one that is used across your standard content. Alrighty, guys, that's a short one. I hope it was useful to you. It's a discussion that I have regularly with my team when we're developing websites and we're looking at them, going, "Yeah, that's not working for me. I need that fixed." And sometimes, if you were to tell me that you'd spent half a day on Google Fonts looking at fonts to choose, I'd believe you. It is that easy to get caught up in it. I'm not going to say that it's a waste of time either. It's probably not a great use of time, but it does happen, and sometimes you do need to just sit there and look at different fonts and try them out and see how they go. Questions, comment, feedback. Did I say something you disagreed with? Did I raise questions that I didn't answer? Have you done this before? What did you find when you were laying out your site and you're trying to choose your fonts and sizes and line heights and all of those things? I would love to know your thoughts, your feedback, your comments. Leave them wherever you're watching or listening to this video, or come and join my community, askcharlyleetham.locals.com. Join the conversation there. We can talk about all these sorts of things. If this video was useful to you, please give it a like, maybe share it with a friend, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel and ring the notification bell so you find out when I drop more content, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye! Hey there, thanks so much for tuning in to Rise and Shine, your daily business tech boost. I hope today's episode gave you some actionable insights that will make your business tech work smarter for you. If you found value, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with other small business owners who could use a daily boost. For more tips, tools, and resources, visit www.askcharlyleetham.com. Until next time, keep rising, keep shining, and let's make tech simple together.